Hello and welcome to episode 13 of deValiante Plays As We Know It by Jaime Scribbles Games. This visual novel is part of Ichio's bundle for racial justice and equality. This visual novel contains strong language and mature themes that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised. Now, without further ado, let's get started. I got up and headed out to grab a coffee before work, like I always do. It was just another day on the security force. I did target practice in preparation for my monthly exam, and I'm starting to get better. Okay. Same old, same old. Now that work was over, I was supposed to just sit at home because of the curfew. But I wanted to see Micah. I snuck out to see Micah and made it to his place without being spotted by any of the security. Knocking as quietly as I could, I hoped he'd answer before anyone saw me. My heart was racing like crazy. The door was opened swiftly, and when he saw me, he tugged me inside before quietly closing the door. "What are you doing here?" He hissed despite being inside and safe now. "You don't have to whisper. I don't think they can hear us." Okay. I know I shouldn't be here. I glanced down at his forearm, covered with his shirt as usual. "Don't tell me you..." I placed my hands on his shoulder and shook my head. "No, of course not. I was worried about you. If anyone finds out about the mark now, you'll be exiled. This curfew, everything is insane. All those rumors the mayor mentioned. It'll be all right. I hope it will anyway. I've gone a long time keeping my past a secret. You're the only one who has ever found out." "Do you think there are really Sandman plots, or do you think the mayor is just, I don't know, trying to distract everyone? Maybe the missing weapons we found were just misplaced?" Despite saying that, I knew better. Vince was meticulous, and the armory was well guarded. I doubt that. The armory is kept tightly locked and monitored. I'm just such a nervous wreck. I'm sorry. It's all right, but you shouldn't be risking so much just to see me. We still have the weekend. How can you seem so calm? Everyone is freaking out. We have a curfew. A freaking curfew. What kind of nonsense is that? Micah sighed and offered me a glass of water, but I turned him down. I know it's stressful, but I think the best we can do is hope for it to wind down on its own. He studied me for a moment. Then he sighed again. You may stay if you wish. I hate to think you'd get caught on your way back. Stay? Here? With Micah? All night? I turned so Micah wouldn't see if I was blushing or not. You wouldn't mind? I mean, that wasn't why I came here. I would love for you to stay with me. If you are comfortable. I'll sleep on the floor. What? No, I can sleep on the floor. Micah gave me a look that said he was clearly not going to let me have my way. We can sleep together? Micah raised a brow and then nibbled his lip just slightly. It wouldn't make you uneasy? I don't know. Nah, it's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. He walked over to me and tapped my chin lightly with his knuckle to get my attention. I looked up at him and tried to mask my sudden embarrassment. I'm not going to rush you or do anything that would upset you. If you would be more relaxed if I slept on the floor. Oh, okay. I kind of don't want to roll for it, but we're going to have to roll for it. I don't want to look. Oh, this is going to be... Oh! I got a 3! I kissed him before I could stop myself. Sweet, sweet Micah. Always so thoughtful, I almost couldn't stand it. When our lips met, I froze up a bit. I hadn't really planned ahead, but he relaxed against me and placed his hands on my hips. My body moved on its own, wrapping my arms around his neck and leaning into him. I felt a dizzying warmth on our lips parted, and his tongue met mine. His grip on me tightened slightly, and I began to feel lightheaded. I broke away for a moment to catch my breath, and our eyes met. I didn't want to stop. I lifted my chin to invite him to kiss me again. He only lightly kissed my lips before moving to kiss my jaw and then my neck. I tugged at the bottom of his shirt while he slipped one of his hands under the fabric of my top. We went slow and spent the night getting to know each other in a very different way than before, I'll say. Morning came before I knew it, and as soon as I was awake, I rushed to get ready. I didn't want to be late to work. Micah was already up and dressed, clearly a morning person. As much as I enjoyed your company last night, I just can't allow you to risk exile. Would you listen if I asked you not to come again? You don't want me to come back? He cleared his throat. It's not that I don't want you to return. It's just that I worry you'll be caught. So if I knock tonight, I'll scold you after I let you in. He sighed and placed a hand on my shoulder. I really hope you won't risk it. I don't know what I would do if you apprehended. We'll see. I might get really lonely. He smiled and seemed to give up for now. Be careful on your way home. It's morning there, but still might be questions if you're seen outside of your block. I nodded and gave him a smile. I'll see you later, Doc. He grinned as I ducked out into the hallways and headed home. Come on! That is easily 3 hearts. That is easily 3 hearts. What is the rating system on this? I got up and headed to grab a coffee before work. Everything was considerably stricter since stuff was from evidence and the armory had gone missing. Vince looked tired and hurt, honestly. It made the whole place feel tense. Who had taken those things? It was hard to concentrate on other stuff despite constantly being called out to deal with graffiti and other rebel activity, as it was called. Whoever was behind that power outage apparently hadn't been alone. I felt tired just sitting at my desk going over a map of marked locations and trying to find a pattern. The mayor was so desperate, Vince had us all looking into it. I wanted to find these people as soon as possible. They were getting dangerous, especially now that they were armed. I continued to stare at the map and tried to stay awake. I hadn't been sleeping very well, and even coffee couldn't seem to get me through this sleepy hour. Now that work was over, I was supposed to just sit at home because of the curfew. But I wanted to see Micah. I paced the room. I knew Micah would want me to stay here. He had requested as much. I suppose I could listen to him. Or not. I was slow and careful. I couldn't help but grin with mischief as I gently tapped on Micah's door. He frowned at me, but was quick to pull me inside. You must stop this. What if you're caught? I shrugged. You can visit me in the holding cells? Do they even allow visitors? You are the security officer! This child. You work security, woman. Whatever. He sighed, but smiled. I suppose there was a book I thought you might like to read. So if you would like to join me. Oh, well, it's a good thing I stopped by then. He handed me a book, and we settled into a pleasant evening of reading. It was a comfortable silence, and it felt nice just to be together in the same room, even if we were doing separate things. It got late, and I glanced over to see Michael asleep with the open book in his hand. I gave him a soft kiss on the forehead and slipped out into the halls. They were empty, so I made my way home as carefully as I could. Home now, alone, I crawled into bed and went to sleep. I still don't understand how I don't have three hearts with Micah. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I should literally have, like, 4 at least. Like, the amount of time that we've been spending together, the amount of time he's been forcing on me, we should have more hearts than that. It makes me so angry. At least my standing has gone up. So is my stress. Has my standing gone up because my mom is, like, dating the mayor? Probably. I got up and headed out to grab coffee before work. It was just another day on the security force, so I don't really care about what is going on here, so I'm just going to skip through all this until we get to this, whatever this nonsense is. Now that work was over, I was supposed to sit at home because of the curfew. But I, of course, wanted to see Micah, like the little trollop I was. I didn't give it much thought, though. I was going to head over to see Micah. Eventually, he wouldn't lecture me, probably. Getting to Micah's place unnoticed was considerably easier this time, but when I got towards his door, I saw he wasn't alone. Hey, I would introduce this gentleman, but he was just leaving. He was mad. Whoever this person was, they weren't welcome here. Join the resistance. He handed me a flyer. It was one of the rebel flyers that had been seen around Camden. I just stared down at it dumbly. He quickly left, leaving me and Micah alone in an awkward silence. I stepped inside before anyone noticed the commotion in the halls. I didn't think you supported the rebels. I don't. Much to their annoyance, it would seem. It appears they have very little medical knowledge among their numbers, so they were trying to recruit me. However, I simply cannot condone working with Sandmen, even to overthrow the mayor. He's not my favorite person, and I do question some of his decisions, but I respect his position. Who knows what would happen if Camden if Sandmen got their hands on it. I agree with you. That's why I was so shocked to find him here. It's my fault. I had opened the door without checking since I assumed it was you. That sounds like it was more my fault than yours. He chuckled, reached toward me, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I forget about the interruption earlier and threw my arms around him so I could pull him into an embrace. We spent the rest of the night talking about other things. I left as it got late, but this time he was awake for a kiss goodbye. Home now, alone, and crawled into bed and went to sleep. Seriously, why am I stuck at 2 hearts? This doesn't make any sense. I got up and headed to grab coffee before work. The Summer's End Festival was now only a few days away, and Vince was trying to allocate appropriate security for the event. He kept muttering under his breath and clearly looked stressed. I gave him some paperwork and loitered for a moment to see if he'd say anything. Maybe I should say something? Vince, don't worry. You're not in line to do detail for the event. What? Weren't you about to ask if you had to work the festival? No, well, I didn't think I was experienced enough to really be asked. You aren't. But you just seem so stressed out. You're a good one, Diva. Now get back to work. I've got a lot I need to get done and you're distracting me. He said it kindly and waved me away. I started to head back to my desk to sit down when someone ran to Vince and quietly whispered something to him. It was urgent enough that he jumped up and ordered a few officers to go to the clinic. After the dust had settled, I learned that the clinic had been robbed. Again. I almost couldn't believe it. Alright, I guess we're gonna sneak over to Micah's again. Micah was prepared to meet me at the door and pulled me inside quickly. He looked exhausted, though, and was still wearing parts of his uniform. Before I could ask why, he looked so tired. Before I could ask why, he looked so tired, he kissed me. When he pulled away, he rested his head against the top of mine and sighed heavily. Hard day? Yes. I took his hand and squeezed it. If he needed me, I'd be here. We sat down on his bed, and Micah finally changed out of his uniform. He looked utterly exhausted, but didn't want to talk about whatever had happened. I was guessing something went wrong with one of those last patients of the day. I let him lean against me, and I grabbed some books for us to read. We spent a quiet evening until his breathing slowed. I glanced over to see he had fallen asleep. I moved and guided his head gently to the pillow. I didn't want to wake him, so I wrote a quick note and snuck out as silently as I could manage. Home now, alone. I crawled into bed and went to sleep. I'm just going to be mad at that forever. I got up and headed out to grab a cup of coffee before work. It was just another day at the security office. Let's go. We gotta go see our boyfriend. Yep. We know. You're gonna go see Micah and probably get in trouble. Headed toward Micah's place, but the hallways weren't as empty as usual. I turned a corner and saw someone else, probably a rebel, duck around a different corner. I nibbled at my lip and forced my feet to move. I couldn't risk staying in the halls. Someone might see me. I continued on my way carefully. I made it to the door and he let me inside. We sat around and talked about a lot of things, work, books, our families. It felt nice just to take things easy and relax with Micah. He had a lot of interesting stories to tell and liked to listen to mine. I'd never felt this close to anyone else before. The evening passed quickly, and before I knew it, the time had come to leave. We said our goodbyes and I headed home. Home, now alone, I crawled into bed and went to sleep. Seriously! With the curfew, I hadn't gotten a lot of chances to stop by the luxury shop. I was meant to meet up with Micah at the library, but I wanted to get something for him for the festival tomorrow. Unfortunately, the only thing I could think that he would want would be a book. Those weren't for sale. I could give him one of mine, but I had loaned most of them to him, and the gesture would feel empty. He wasn't particularly fond of anything else, which made thinking about a summer ends gift for him difficult. Eventually, I settled on an old pretty postcard. Ooh, okay, that, I would accept that. Or a stuffed animal. Let's see, what do the dice say? The dice say stuffed animal. Appropriate. It was cute, and I thought he might at least appreciate the gesture. I ran the stuffed animal home so that I could wrap it later, then headed to the library so I could meet up with Micah. I walked in and saw Micah sitting alone. Micah had an odd assortment of books set out and was giving me a strange look as he pointed them out. This book is about flowers. Do you like flowers? Sure. What about this book about animals? He waited for me to reply, but I was too bewildered by his behavior. What was really going on here? He's trying to get you a gift, dumbass. Are you trying to figure out what to get me for summer's ends? Judging by his face, I was right. I suppose I was not subtle enough in my investigation. It's all right. I just got you something, actually. Maybe asking outright would have been better than guessing? No, I'm sure whatever you choose will be delightful. Perhaps I should try the same. I laughed. He was taking it so seriously. Oh, but then maybe this was his first summer's end in a long time where he was not alone. How do you normally spend summer's end? Oh, normally? Well, I usually stayed in the clinic and organized medicine or looked over patient records. What about when the old Dr. Ali took you in? Didn't the two of you celebrate? No. He chuckled for a moment. Not really. Ollie preferred quiet evenings at home, reading or working. I frowned and didn't bother asking about his time with the Sandmen. I didn't believe they celebrated any holidays at all. At least not that I knew of. I was curious, but I didn't want to ask and reopen any old wounds, so I changed the subject instead. So, how exactly were you planning to get me a flower or an animal? Well, that is a very good question. I was trying to be as natural about it as possible. I see. I could have picked you up some stuffed animals or pictures of flowers. I am somewhat limited to what is available here. I will like anything you get me, Micah. He smiled and started to stack the books and put them away. Trevor was not happy with me getting all of these out. I'd better put these back exactly where I got them. No, absolutely not. When you are in a library and you get out a huge stack of books and you try to put them back on the shelf, don't do that. That is, no. No. You're wrong. You are so wrong. It's weird that the two people of Camden who love books the most don't get along. I don't dislike him. I just won't be bullied into surrendering my private collection. Yeah. I helped him return the books to their proper place. We chatted about work and my mother for a bit before going our separate ways. And I'm gonna crawl in bed and go to sleep because tomorrow's gonna be a big day. And I'm still at 2 hearts! What is this? This is nonsense! I woke up, and for a moment I wondered where Mom was until I remembered she no longer lived here. I really needed to get used to living on my own. I gathered the present. It was wrapped in a nice patterned paper, but it looked like a lumpy trash. I sighed and tried to smooth it out. I hoped Micah liked the stuffed animal. I stepped into the community center. The room was decorated with paper streamers and a lot of the same type of stuff it was usually done up with. I felt a bit let down, but tried to forget about it. I took a few steps in, glancing around for Micah, but then arms wrapped around me from behind and I was squeezed. Diva! Mom! Mom released me and I turned to see her with a flushed face and a big smile. I feel like you almost killed me. Oh, don't be so dramatic. I couldn't possibly squeeze you that hard. Here, I got you something. I had picked her up something as well and handed her a small package. It was a chipped mug, but it had flowers all over it. She carefully opened the gift and turned it over in her hands. Her eyes lit up and she hugged me again. It wasn't the greatest, but I thought she might like it. I got you something too. She handed me a gift. I opened it and looked down at another pretty coffee mug. Aw, Mom. It was my turn to hug her, and we chuckled over our shared present. We had gotten each other almost the same thing. I haven't seen much of you lately. Are you and the mayor... Rick? Just call him Rick. I must have made a face because she started to laugh. It's not like I'm asking you to call him Dad. Mom just laughed. Yes, we are doing well. This one's a keeper. Because he's a cult leader. I sighed and shrugged. I'm happy if you're happy. She placed a hand on my shoulder and gave it a squeeze. I know you're anxious to find Micah, so I'll leave you alone. I blinked, unsure how to feel. I nodded and she walked away as graceful as always. It was so strange to spend so much time away from her now that but I think I had gotten used to it. We always lived together, and it was always just us. Men came and went, sure, but the went was always inevitable. It wasn't like the mayor was going anywhere, so I guess this was it. I rubbed at my eyes and tried to clear my head. People lived differently in Camden, and this was all part of that. I just needed to find Micah. Then any melancholic thoughts would fade away. I wandered over to the refreshment table, wondering where he was. Then I was tapped on the shoulder and turned to see him. "Happy Summer's Eve, Diva." He handed me a carefully wrapped package that put a lump into my lump to real shame. I almost didn't want to hand it to him now, but I did anyway. I opened mine and found another large coffee mug. It had faded print of strange animals. Cats, maybe? It was hard to tell, but it was pretty. I guess my coffee love was a little obvious to the people around me. "You know me so well." Micah laughed. "Ah, but I see you've already received one." He pointed at the one my mother had given me. "Yeah, but yours has pretty cats on it." He finally looked down at the lumpy monstrosity I had handed him. I bit my tongue before I apologized. He seemed pleased, and I wanted to see if he liked what it was. He started to pull at the wrapping paper so carefully it was making me antsy. But such a simple thing. A stuffed animal. When it was finally revealed, he smiled and looked up at me. "Diva, this is very thoughtful. I will cherish it." I felt my face grow warm, and I chewed on my lip to try and calm myself down. "I'm glad that you like it." Micah tucked my present away and then pulled me into his arms. "Would you like to dance? With 2 coffee mugs and a stuffed animal? Okay." Yep, wait, they aren't really playing the music for it." He just shrugged and led me towards the clear area of the floor. He was skilled as always, and I started to relax. It was so easy to relax around Micah. For a brief moment, I tried to picture him as a sandman, with the tattered rags and blood-stained weapons tied at their hips. Blistered skin for being out in the sun so often. It didn't seem to suit him at all. They were a violent and at best chaos-driven force on the surface. Then there was Micah, a doctor who loved books and had devoted his life to helping the weak, sick, and injured. I'm glad he was able to live a life that made him happy. Was he happy? I studied him for a moment, but my observation didn't go unnoticed. "Is there something on my face?" "It's just, are you happy here in Canton?" Micah smiled. "I am content, if that is what you mean. Of course, things have been a bit happier since you moved here. I always felt like I needed to make up for my earlier life. A dark secret no one knew, and it weighed so heavily on me. It was exhausting in truth. But then there was you. Most people only ever see me as a doctor. But you know my secret, and yet here you are." He spun me gracefully and pulled me closer when I faced him again. "You haven't run for me or condemned me for it. I like to think you know the real me, and are still fond of me despite of Micah." I leaned my head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat, steady and warm. "Nothing could change how I feel about you." He sighed and ran a hand carefully through my hair. We both fell quiet and we danced. I let the music fall over us and tried to focus on the sound of his heart beating in his chest. The night ended so fast, but it was time to go. This was the best summer's eve I had ever experienced. I was exhausted and said a reluctant goodbye to Micah. Home now. I crawled into bed and went to sleep. How am I still at 2 hearts? Oh my god. Thank you for joining me for episode 13 of As We Know It by Jaime Scribbles Games. The next episode will be out shortly. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment letting me know what you like down below. Please no hate or spoilers, as I'm not above removing those comments and the people who make them. That's all for now, folks, and I'll see you next time. This is so messed up.